Hello everyone. As continuation of our program, we are very glad, and this is our pleasure to introduce to you Antonio Vázquez. Antonio is the current CEO president of a green hydrogen company that will be listed in NASDAQ probably in summer, but also his experience is quite remarkable because he has been the CEO and president of 4 listed companies in Spain. He was in Torrevieja, Altanis, Iberia, and EIG. His experience is really very interesting for all of us, but especially how he has transformed the companies where he worked, because now he will tell us that in some of the companies that he worked in was very bad situation in economics. And so he turned up the companies and he has been a very successful businessman in Spain. And so thank you, Antonio, for coming and sharing your thoughts and your experience with us. And please, we are going to give him the floor for 40 minutes, roughly, and then we will have another 10 minutes for questions that you want to ask. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. It's with the occasion of this important celebration. 77 years is a lot. And I'm on the 7th, I'm not in the double 7 yet. So I'm happy to be with you. And may I share with you that before coming here right now, and we had the chance with Chris and chatting with Miguel. Well, before we had the chance to talk with Isabel and Miguel about this event, the reason why for having an event like this, and how important is for you, how important is the moment, the momentum that the company is doing right now. But afterwards, a couple of weeks ago, we had the details, and for me it was a great opportunity to be knowing the details about the legacy, which is quite important. Not everybody knows it, but I think it's quite important that you are basically the founder of this practice, and about your structure, which is pretty unique. I mean, this dual partnership of being partner of the local entities and at the same time of the parent company. That makes an amazing game of interest. At the end of the day, what I think is introducing a lot of dynamics in the way you're managing your business. And this is a unique model, certainly. And to know a little bit more about your strategy. Chad was very emphatically talking about the market segmentation way you're approaching right now, and the big bold driver that you are getting more and more enforceable from now on. The way in which you in the future are going to be sourcing, and are being sourcing already by your own private equity, which is pretty unique as well. And the big difference between developed market and market to be developed, which are entirely two different features. And I couldn't agree more. So we're talking about the 4 critical capabilities, 3 business units, and it's amazing because I have a lot of experience about the executive interim business unit, because a long time ago when I was starting my professional life in Madrid, I was loaned as an interim manager to a company in the south of Spain in a very difficult situation, and it was a kind of assignment for 1 year and a half, and I stayed with the company. So at the end of the day, remaining the company and was my jump to the other side of the table. So since that was around 50 years ago, and or 45 years ago, and since then I have been very happy in life on the side of the industry. But was in a kind of interim management assignment the way I started being involved in the industry. And with this conversation, not only I was able to understand a little bit more about yourself, but also to understand where you are and what are you looking for in the future. And at the end of the day, we did conclude that there were two magic words to take into consideration right now. One is uncertainty, and the other one is resilience/transformation. Resilience is an amazing word that we didn't use 5 years ago. Now it's becoming very fashionable. And resilience has two parts. One is offensive and the other one is defensive. So you have to have a great capacity of resistance to be resilient, but it doesn't enough. It's not enough. So you need to have a lot of flexibility. You need to be able to structure yourself, to reinvent yourself in such a way that you are dealing with the face wind and at the same time taking advantage of the tailwind and making your company much bigger. So nobody in the world we have been living with the trend, the normal trend and the inertia that we have been living in, we don't have the strength to be resilient. So we have to reinvent in some way ourselves. So my objective during these few minutes is to share with you what my own experience is. I cannot teach you anything. I mean, likely more of you are much better prepared than myself to talk about these issues. The only thing I can share with you is my own experience and vis-a-vis this situation of uncertainty and this situation of resilience. And just to talk about uncertainty, if today, instead of being in 2023, spring 2023, we were today in 2011, let me go 12 years back, I could be here telling you how enthusiastic they were with the project of merging Iberia with British Airways, and how nervous everybody were because the two companies were very sick. In the best scenario, they were very sick. After 1911, aviation was a disaster, companies were losing a fortune. The bottom line is that both companies together at that point in time, they were losing 1.6 billion, right? And British Airways was inside the biggest restructuring done in the aviation industry. Iberia couldn't survive, and actually because of the level of cost and revenue didn't work with the comparison. And the big driver of the transformation was the crisis one side, and on the other side was the liberalization of the air traffic control over the world, starting with Southwest in the US 25 years ago, and later on taking place in Europe with the creation of the European community and the introduction of the low-cost carriers and the high-speed train with a big subsidy given by the states. So at that point in time we couldn't survive, both of us, and we merged. And then, so I would be here in Spain 2011 telling you know, how difficult was the project and how difficult was the situation we were in to tackle. If instead of being in 2011, we were in 2019, which is basically 8 years after, I would be very happy. Because at that company which was losing 1.6 billion in 2011, there was a very healthy company with 60,000 employees, 130 and million passengers, 25 billion revenues. In 2011 they were 11 billion. 25 billion revenue, 5.4 billion EBITDA, 3.3 billion EBIT, 2.9 billion net profit, and 1 billion dividend between dividends and buybacks. So 1 billion remuneration to the shareholder. So I will tell you, because of the corporate rules and the corporate governance rules in the United Kingdom, we were listed in the UK and Spain. Because of the rules, I couldn't stay more than 9 years because it's is no chairman in the FTSE 100 not being independent, and you cannot qualify as independent in the UK code with more than 9-year tenure. So, and I will be telling you right now, I'm going to leave next year. I'm going to leave extremely happy because it has been a dream. You know, it was a dead, 2 companies, and now they are very alive. We are the number 4 company in market cap in the market. We're on the top 5 airline in the world, and they were extremely happy. What was happening outside in 2019? Well, there was some tensions between US and Iran with the location of the nuclear weapon. Some tension in China and Hong Kong with the election. Brexit was a big deal. And the big dilemma of whether to break the United Kingdom or to break Ireland. Something needed to be broken to fit it properly. ESG was a point in time in which we were talking about the bloody ESG at that point in time. 19 August 2019 was the business roundtable meeting in the United States, the famous Larry Fink first letter. We did with the letter, everybody of us. And talking about the purpose, which from my point of view, the purpose is not much longer than the principle of the Christian humanism. So you have to be honest and you have to play clean and you have to play forever. And purpose was starting with the big deal in the investment community. And at that point in time, because of the crisis, the financial crisis before, the world was extremely concerned about the inequality and the problem that the inequality was provoking in terms of populism from the right wing and from the left wing. If we were in 2020, 1 year later, instead of being very happy here, I could be here saying, well, I don't know whether we're going to survive. With the 25 billion turnover, 130 million, everything was out. I do remember the front page of the Economist. The Economist is very smart in the way they draw the front page. I do remember the front page of the Economist at that point in time with the whole globe and a letter saying closed. Everything was closed. Everything was there. So we suddenly been very euphoric some few months ago. And we suddenly, with 540 aircraft in fleet, you can multiply about around 60 to 75, 80 million each one in terms of capex to see what the level of capex not working was. So, out of the 540 aircraft, we had 500 grounded, 60,000 people at home, getting salaries but not working. Burning 1.5 million each hour. So the Sundays, Saturdays, holidays, 1.5 million each hour. So the first few months, we were burning a ratio between 800 and 1 million per month, and with no future, basically. Outside, what was happening? A lot of public money trying to remediate the situation. The feeling that we were dependent in terms of medicines, in terms of health appliances and equipment, and so a high debt coming everywhere. The growth stopped entirely, the world was collapsing. Supply chain was a total disaster because the chips were escaping from the COVID and they were creating a situation of blockade all over the world in almost a single harbor. And the concept of virtual work started appearing in our world. Well, I have to tell you that I couldn't leave. Actually, my plan was to leave in January 2020, and the board asked me to stay for 1 more year to change the succession plan. So to change it before the CFO, later the CEO, and later the chairman, in such a way that the chairman could be assisted
for 6-7 months the new CEO, which was already named. And so I stayed for 1 more year, which was a total disaster in terms of business, in terms of results, and so. But I can tell you, it has been the most satisfactory year in my professional life, because we were facing the real thing. We were not dealing with ticket boxes or compliance or whatever which is artificial. A lot of things are artificial, by the way, in corporate life. And we were dealing with the real thing, saving the life of the company, taking care of our employees, taking care of our customers, which needed to be repatriated, reconverting the aircraft because we didn't have a fleet, special prepared cargo fleet, reconverting the aircraft for bringing face masks and bringing a lot of material in order to be positive and to be helping with the COVID disease. 2021, everything was very promising. I mean, traffics were going up a little bit quite quickly. So there was some problem, but China was still closed, and we didn't have a lot of activity in the Asia-Pacific region, but things were working more or less. And suddenly in 2020, Mr. Putin decided that our life was too comfortable. And so, if you recall, in March 2022, the front page again of The Economist with the big flag of a Ukrainian flag bleeding. That was a total disaster. So we did realize that we had a big problem in the supply chain, big crisis in the supply chain, in energy. Energy, we were blaming at that point in time a hero, which was Mrs. Merkel, and we were talking about her, about the Ostpolitik, because of the dependence of Germany, of the gas from Russia, which is not true, because the Ostpolitik started in 1922 with the Rapallo agreement between Russia and Germany, which was energy and defense. It's a neighborhood agreement, so it wasn't recent. We did face a disruption in the supply chain of raw material. Prices went up, food prices went up, fertilizer were not available. And we did realize that from the energy point of view, from the wheat point of view, from the fertilizer point of view, we were in the hands of Ukraine/Russia, and either it was a way to find corridors to go to the sea in order to ship this kind of merchandise all over the world, or we were not able at all to survive the crisis of food, which we didn't expect. Inflation was up, and we were killing the key nation model. John Maynard Keynes, at the end of the Second World War, used to say there are two limit situations. What he said, we had to take advantage of the public policy in favor of public investment to replace the destroyed capex by the war, and that's going to be the locomotive for the economy. We created, a model which say that there are two limits. One is a growth with inflation, and the other one is a recession / slowdown with unemployment. And then suddenly we are finding the worst of the two worlds, because we're finding inflation, we have a real recession, and it's not affecting certainly unemployment in the way we were expecting it was to affect. Thanks God, because otherwise we would have that explosion in the social explosion. China's slowdown has been taking place in 2022. Deglobalization trend, the crisis of the multilateralism is in there, because everybody tries to protect itself. Basically, the driver of the European Union right now is strategic autonomy and for the future. And ESG became suddenly a less priority, and for everybody. Now, Larry Fink every single period is talking less about green and more about inflation and return on investment. And finally, we are living in a recession, which is very strange, because it's induced by the central banks, because the model doesn't know how to play against inflation, and with a huge debt after the COVID and after the war, with this huge debt, public and private, if we don't take care of inflation and the are going higher, we're going to have a collapse in the financial system. So central banks all over the world, growing interest rate, trying to decelerate and slow down the growth of demand without getting it, actually. So let's see what's happening. Meanwhile, just to end up with my personal reference, in 2022, I left my former company. I came to work in a problem about hydrogen, which I'm very excited with. I went to the private equity business. I'm involved right now in the pretty much in energy and defense. I think they're very good sectors for the future, plus university, plus foundations, plus seeking a grant, which is actually very important. So there are several key foundations of the post-Yalta agreement in 1945, which, let's say, the post-Yalta order, which are a big question mark today. One is democracy. So the way we see democracy is taking decisions, politicians, let's see what happened in the US, because it seems to happen that the next elections are going to be pretty much a confrontation between the woke and the anti-woke people, and which should be the name of the game, but it seems to happen that the autocracies are being more efficient in managing their own situation than their own democracies. And that's a reality today, because populism has created a number of parties, and as in Europe is happening this way, and the electoral mathematics doesn't work. So it's the sort of coalition that we have to create are creating a lot of weak government, and I think we will have weak government for a while. Multilateralism, which has been the paradigm of the post-Yalta agreement, and especially after '89, from the end of the Soviet Union, the multilateralism, in which having created a very dynamic and very efficient global trading, is a question mark today. The demography equation is changing dramatically, so it's at the end of the day, the gross national product is a result of two things: demography and productivity. So how many people you have, how much each one of them are producing. And since the Industrial Revolution in 1789, and in Europe, I mean, we had the technology and the productivity has been on the Western world, and the demography has been on the other world. Suddenly we find a situation in which the democracy and productivity, the demography and productivity are together in the same side. And the Chinese, they know very well that is the reality. So, to face this kind of uncertainty, and what's going to happen with the war in Ukraine, what's going to happen in Sudan, what's going to happen in Taiwan, with this kind of uncertainty, it seems to happen that a new Yalta is required. So somebody has to sit down at a point in time to get an agreement for the next 45 or 50 years in such a way that predictability is going to be the ground for the economic growth. And so it seems to happen that the new Yalta should be the US with China sitting down together. But it doesn't seem that they're getting closer right now. And meanwhile, in Europe we are living in a quite strange situation, because it is not true that the priority in the United States right now has to do with the Atlantic and has to do with Europe. Priority in the US has to do with the Pacific. They want to know what's happening in Taiwan, in the China Sea, and they did an agreement with the United Kingdom and Australia and Japan to take care of their situation in the Pacific. They're looking at the Chinese are looking at the American. They don't have any rush in solving, neither the American nor the Chinese, they don't have any rush in solving the European situation. I can say they're making even money on this situation, buying cheap or selling expensive, and selling weapons, and it's not about situation. So Europe is not in the best position right now. And meanwhile, the Chinese are taking positions in the Middle East, are taking position in Africa, taking position in the Pacific stream of South America, and which are very solid position. I mean, actually, the Western world has been trying to help to resolve the situation in the Middle East for a long while. But it seems to happen that suddenly the Chinese made an agreement with Iran, the Chinese made an agreement with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, a big ally of the US in the past, made an agreement with Iran, which was almost impossible. You know what the agreement has been signed? In Beijing. So somebody's sponsoring all this type of situation. It seems to happen that the Chinese, they're making their homework before sitting down in this new Jalta to try to see how the world is going to be spread. So that's where we are, how to deal with this kind of uncertainty. It's when we were having our meeting, preparatory meeting of this with chapter, Chris Miguel, and I was referring to a survey by PwC, which is a very good one. Actually, they have about 26 years making this survey, which has to do with the leadership and has to do with the interview made to more than 4,000 CEOs all over the world. And before we were talking about survey, I'm part of something called board forum in McKinsey, and we have a very good meeting every year. And the McKinsey meeting this year has been devoted to resilience, and the conclusion was that we needed the board is basically devoted to the board of directors as a brief reference, and what the conclusion of the report says is that it's absolutely key for the board and management teams to understand that they have to develop the double capacity, defensive and offensive, and that you have to be absolutely rational in this point in time. The volatility is going to be there for a long while, and the board and the management should focus on growth and productivity one side, accelerate divestment and acquisition. So I guess part of the investment in your business is whether to put an office here or not here, and everybody wants an office in there close to their house. And so you have to be absolutely rational. And the closing what is not working and opening what could work quickly. And keep strategic optionality on the balance sheet, and which means to have a healthy balance sheet. And it's not the time to be fully indebted because of the rate of interest and the variability of a long period of time being, but to have a quite solid and strong and well-founded balance sheet. And I'm also referring to this PwC interview with the CEOs. One of them was Chad, and interviewed by PwC among the 4,000. And the conclusion was quite clear. They said 40% of the CEOs of the world, the top companies in the world, they do believe that their companies, they're viable from the economic point of view in 10 more years, unless they proceed with a substantial transformation of the business. Not viability alone. And 70% of these CEOs, they believe this year will be it's been a year of slowdown, and so we have to prepare for it. And the answer for everything is transformation. Let's talk a little bit about transformation. I mean, I know you have been talking about transformation. Chapter has been addressing with you some words about transformation this morning. And what I want to share with you was the transformation experience that has been in my life. The bottom line is that the last 30 years in my life, I have been working for companies without any future. And so I came to the tobacco business at the point in time when Spain was becoming part of the European Union, so free movement of merchandise, capital, workers. Beautiful paradigm, but a disaster for a monopoly. And it was a monopoly. And I didn't came when it was a monopoly. We never worked for a monopoly. It should be very pleasant, by the way. But it came to the company because the company wanted to develop desperately an international activity to compensate the local activity, which was coming down because the share market was diminishing dramatically. People told me you were crazy. I mean, you're coming in a non-growing business, it's going to be a disaster, and so on. And the problem was not only the situation of losing market share, not having international presence, the situation was monopoly, state power in the company, highly unionized, and pretty rational way of working and lack of efficiency. So the way we did was to try to develop an international business, and we did it. And try to create new business units, that's to waste the organic way of growing. And we did create a couple of business units. Cigars and logistics was a cigarette company. Cigars and logistics. That when the company, years later, was sold, they amount by almost 45% of the total value of the company. It didn't exist before, right? So we did create it. We made a lot of restructuring because merger don't solve a problem if you don't solve the problem itself. And the result was between 1992 and 2000, we were making huge restructuring, again in 1992. And between 2000 and 2005, we merged with the French company, Seta. So when we merged with Seta, the enterprise value, that means market cap plus debt, and the enterprise value of the company was 1.6 billion. And in 2007, which company was sold, because Imperial Tobacco made a very substantial offer, the company was sold by 16 billion enterprise value. So it multiplied by 10 in 6 years. After having invested a lot and having given dividends by 3.5 billion in the company. It works. In the lines, I referred before, and so we came from the 1.6 billion loss to the almost 5 billion EBITDA. And the way of transforming was, again, a significant restructuring from the standalone point of view. The merge with British Airways, an acquisition of companies like Welling, like British Midland, that we later on we diluted within the company, and Welling, British Midland, and Air Lingus, and we did create a champion in the Atlantic with a clear vocation. And I can tell you, it works. Really, it worked. And unfortunately, after the COVID and after all these disasters of the COVID plus the war, the company is in a very healthy position. When I had been asked by the board in 2020 to say, well, stay 1 year more, what they told me is basically, I mean, we have to raise 50 million liquidity, we have to raise 3 billion equity in a market where to raise equity was very difficult, especially losing money, which is not that easy. And we did it quite decently, quite well. And please take care of the final agreement of the Brexit, because it was quite a personal improvement between Brussels, London, and Madrid in trying to get a good agreement, as far as a withdrawal agreement between the UK and the European Union is concerned. Take care of the succession program, and later on you can leave. And so I was very happy to did it. I think I delivered reasonably on my target. And the thing that I'm more proud and more happy of all this time is the reaction of the people, the way the people has been working to solve all this situation, the way they have been embracing this concept of transformation, which is much easier in a tragic situation and in a perfect storm than in normal conditions, because the legacy relies on inercies, and that's really complicated. The answer to the people, and I'm extremely proud of the people who is in charge, are in charge of the company today, which are my team, so I'm absolutely happy. I, for the time being, I have nothing to do with the company, but a very a significant amount of shares that I'm looking for they going up quickly, and a very good relationship with all the people. There is no recipe for transformation at all. The most important recipe is everybody within the organization embracing it. And this is very easy to say, but not that easy to execute. Because it means that sometimes people which are too much attached to legacy, they're not any longer an asset for the company. So you have quite a difficult job in trying to involve everybody in the picture and really embracing, really embedding this principle inside themselves. I think it's a key of being creative cultural transformation. In our case, it's worked very well the creation of a transformation offices. I had the transformation offices in the last 35 years. For the merger, we did create immediately transformation office. Because when you merge, everybody is going back to the legacy. And especially if they have a lot of legacy, like the British Airways Iberia, tobacco company in France, and Tabacalera, they were a strong legacy. And because they were a flagship for the country. And so it's we created transformation offices in a sort of concept of cross-fertilization with people who didn't have anything to do with the operation but to improve the efficiency. They didn't care about which company was and where place were. Let's make the efficiencies and putting in place immediately a system of best practices, almost mandatory. So if somebody were doing something all over the world better than somebody else, the best practices office plus the transformation office, they were trying to impose the best practice. So sometimes to impose is painful because you don't make an omelette without breaking eggs. And sometimes it's painful, but you have to get rid of the people who do not contribute to the transformation since day one. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And people must understand that the attachment to legacy is good for nothing. So you have to be very proud of your history, but very grateful for your future. So you cannot rely on your history to grow. And transformation required an amazing breakdown in the CEO agenda, because now what we have is the need of investing in cybersecurity, fixing the things with the supply chains. I'm talking, not only in the services or in the industry. Fixing the things in the supply chain, redefining geographies, because the geopolitics is creating new opportunities and new problems, and investing in technology, defining the capital structure and the capital allocation. There are many young people in this room, but more likely they're not familiar with the concept of inflation. So since the 70s, I have been living with 120% inflation in Mexico, and Argentina with double digit. But inflation is a new thing for the new people. For the new executive, let's say the people who are 40, 50 years old, inflation is a new thing. You cannot manage the capital allocation concept. You cannot manage the debt and the capital structure of the company same way. With this rate of inflation, this uncertainty in the amount of money which is going to be available, and than we were doing before. And a very important thing that the CEOs have to be dealing with in all the industry, in all the world right now, and this is a big piece of concern, is attracting talent. Is a real deficit. New professions which are coming and we are not prepared. I've been pretty much involved in the university. And in pushing every day, say, well, I don't know whether the grades and the master's degrees and the post-grade that we have, they're good for the future. Maybe 75% of the professions in 20 years do not exist today. So we have to see how to work and with whom to work, So attracting talent is occupying a lot of time of the CEOs and the top management team all over the world, which is good for you, by the way. It's your business, so I think you are in quite a growing industry right now. So and another thing which I think is important from the CEO point of view, and I had the experience on my own, when you have quite a difficult situation in the short term, you don't have a lot of time to be thinking of the long term. In our case, with the aviation, it worked very well that the CEO of the company was pretty much focused on the operation in the short term, and he was as chairman taking it over, working together. But I was pretty much in charge of strategy and to see beyond the mountains and to see what happened and what to do, and we could have a good combination. But you don't have a lot of time. And the processes that normally has been created for me pushing the growth in the company, driven by a big leader on top of everything, right now, maybe it is much better to improve the processes in such a way that you can decentralize a lot of decisions. So processes has been very robust and very solid for that. Decentralize a lot of decisions in such a way that the CEO and the president of the company, they're having a lot of time to think on the future and to be reinventing the business almost every day. Another very important thing is the most likely scenario in every single company is that the CEOs and the chairman, they do believe that we cannot do it alone. I'm going to explain myself. We were very excited being a driver of technology change in the airline industry. We wanted to be digital on everything. We killed, as a matter of fact, the amount of paper that were traveling in the cabin with the pilot. You remember the pilot case. So it doesn't exist any longer. It's an iPad today. And so we were working very hard. And we put a lot of money in the digitalization, technology investment, and we did realize that we didn't have the capacity now to attract the talent which is able to provoke all these type of changes. Because the guys, mathematicians, engineers, with air here and tattoo and jeans, 25 years old, 26 years old, they don't have any interest in being part of a company like British Airways, like Iberia, with a lot of legacy, working 8 hours every day, and they don't have any serious interest in that. So we were not attractive, and we were attracting people which were a little younger than us, but almost as obsolete as us. So, and we say we have to do something. So we have to rely in a different manner. We did create a sort of a concept, which was 151, which was a big umbrella, providing capital, providing data, and providing room for the people who were developing software applications, and so in such a way that with our money and with our infrastructure, they could try it, and they could continue being the owner of their own thing, and working in scenarios that we were defining and with objectives that we were defining. And we were extremely happy because a lot of people came. But before going to this concept of 151, we did discover the concept of ecosystem. So there is an ecosystem in technology that I didn't know that exists, because the ecosystem in technology doesn't have a country, doesn't have an location. So you put an application, and a fellow from Australia is talking about the shuttle between Barcelona and Madrid, and the way of improving the relationship with the customers. And so we did discover that the access to this kind of ecosystem is absolutely fundamental. And which is the same thing in energy. I mean, in energy, nobody can do it alone. And the transition has to take care of putting together a lot of people. So in things like climate change, ESG strategies, technology, I don't think the companies are going to be able to do it on their own. I think the companies have to rely in people who want to cooperate with them. And domination cannot be the rule. The rule has to be reciprocity. And the rule has to be, let's have a win-win together. And let's try to be part of a world which, we cannot create on our own. Just to wrap up, and we live in an uncertain world. where technology, defense, energy, and talent are growing industry. So very one, I'm into that, so it's fine. They're going to be growing sectors, and that's an amazing thing. Traditional business in all sectors has to transform to survive. Very simple. It's no question mark with that. A transformation everywhere is going to require a lot of talent, and new talent that maybe we don't know still which kind of it. Talent your business. And the challenge is for you is to do it much better than your competitor. And that is actually what you are, what you are trying to do right now. And if I understand properly, with the new mandate, with the new era which starts right now, you're taking off on your own transformation right now. So I wish you a very nice flight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And, so we're open for questions. Would you say something?
I can't follow that. I don't have anything to say. Thank you very much, Antonio. And one more round of applause for Antonio. Thank you. We wish you all the best in your endeavors. And the hydrogen space is the path to the future. And so happy flying. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. And I think Chris, do we have a 5-minute break here, or are we going right into the next session? Right to the next session, which will be Mr. Stone's, right? Profit profiling, right? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.